Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a special video talking about all the news we learned from the Three Ravens publishing panel at LibertyCon. For those of you who don't know, LibertyCon is a science fiction fantasy book convention that also has like an art and STEM track as well, but it's mainly a book convention held in Chattanooga, Tennessee every year. I was fortunate enough to get to go this year, and I went and reported on several of the panels. I already have videos out talking about the news from Chris Kennedy Publishing, from the Baen Traveling Roadshow, from Raconteur Press, and in this video, I'll talk about Three Ravens Publishing. And so, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to reveal a little bit what I learned. This was my first exposure to Three Ravens Publishing. And so, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we learned from the publisher. I think the publisher's name was William Joseph Roberts. But I'll reveal what I learned as well as discuss all the books they talked about. They talked at the beginning of the panel how this publisher is about 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old. So it's a little bit older than Raconteur Press, which is a little bit newer, but it's still a fairly recent start. And they, of course, typically do speculative genre fiction at this publisher. And they talked about a few of the cool things that they're doing. And so to give some highlights, one of the really cool things that I don't think I've ever heard of a publisher do this in such a way was that they contracted with a heavy metal band to write a song or to write music for one of their series, their book series. They have this series called their Car Warrior series, and actually one of the authors gave me one of their books from the Car Warrior series, and so they contracted with this band called Revolution X, which I believe is out of Wisconsin, but they contracted with this band to write heavy metal music that's supposed to tie into their book series. And that is really fascinating, that's creative, that's a way to try to give yourself an edge in the market, to give you something that other publishers don't have. And so I really thought that was a cool, unique thing that Three Ravens Publishing had. They also talked about how the way that they do their business, and the head of the publisher basically talked about how because they're so small, rather than do traditional payout for stories, they pay the authors based off of the percentages when they do an anthology. So if you participate to an anthology, you get paid based off of the percentage of the sales of the anthology as opposed to like an upfront. That's what it seems like the publisher was saying. And they did talk about their best selling anthology series is their Tales from the Trailer Park series, which they did talk about, and I'll show the covers for that in a moment. But that series looks like a lot of fun. It looks like kind of humorous horror comedy type things. And so they do have several anthologies that are going to be published in the next few months, and they have what's called open call, which means that you can send them the your short story idea. And so I will include in the video a link to their website that shows you where all the open call information is. But I'm going to go through quickly and just discuss what that open call is and when it's due. So for their Trailer Park 4 anthology series, which is the creature feature horror comedy series, the submissions are due July 1st. They also talked about their Broken Highways, which is part of their Car Warriors gamelit fiction series, where the submissions are due August 1st. They also talked about Space Coast Face the Storm, which is like a sci-fi anthology that's due August 1st. This is if you want to submit a short story, that is. So if you want to submit, it's by these due dates. They talked about their Steampunk Cogs and Cutlasses anthology. The due date is August 1st. They talked about their anthology Seems a Little Crazy, which is speculative fiction and conspiracy theories, and that submission is due September 1st. Let's see. They talked about Wild Magic, which is due November 1st, and that is kind of like a Forest Fae fantasy idea. They also have their Tales from the Night Side, which is due December 1st, 2024. That's part of their Car Wars gamelit fiction. And then they have the What If Skunk Works, which is due January 1st, and that is speculative fiction. They have their Brave Knights Heroic Courage, which is due March 1st, 2025. And then Escape Plan Earth, which is due April 1st, 2025, and that's like a pulp mad science fiction type thing. So it's really cool that they went through and were able to easily tell everyone about their open call. They were able to tell everyone what types of anthologies they do, which you can tell by what I just listed. They have a broad type of anthologies that they publish at this publisher. So that's basically the information we learned about their open call system. Let's talk about the books that they either have out now or have coming out soon. And they talked about 30-ish books and series. So I'm just going to quickly, like I did with all the other publishers, I'm just going to list the title, show you the cover, stuff like that real quick, and go through them. Talk about list who the author is if it's a novel. If it's an anthology, I'm just going to show you the anthology. So the first book they talked about was one of their Car Warriors book, 72 Hours to Graceland, by David Hensley. I actually, again, the author actually gave me a copy for that one. They also have It Came from the Trailer Park 3 anthology collection. They have a book in their JTF 13 series titled Wave Song, which is by Michael Gantz. They have That Unfortunate Problem with Grandmother's Head and Other Stories by Karen Haber, also known as Karen Haber Silverberg. And that name, Silverberg, may sound familiar to science fiction fans. That's the wife of Robert Silverberg, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. We also have Tales from the Mare Inebrium, a spaceport bar. I hope I pronounced that right. By Dan L. Hollifield. We have Battlefield, Missouri, by Arnold P. Montgomery. They have their Killdash series by Lee Ellis, including the books The Wizard and the Witch Queen, The Cursed Assassins, The Ronin, and The Second Writing. They also talked about their Blood, Sweat, and Steel, Tales of Future Combat and Mechanized Warfare. And this anthology had a very unique story behind it that David Drake had been contracted to write something for it, and he did. And then I think he was writing an essay or a foreword or something. I think it was a foreword. But the collection was supposed to release on a Friday, and David Drake passed away on a Tuesday. And the publisher talked about how he wasn't sure whether or not he should even release the anthology like that. And so he actually contacted another editor, Toni Weisskampf at Baen, who is a very nice editor, and she suggested that David Drake would have wanted the book to come out. And so they still published it, and I thought that was a really sweet, touching story. They also talked about their book, Tales of the Apocalypse, which is an anthology which includes a story by Robert Silverberg. And yes, one of the classic science fiction writers, I believe he was big in like the 80s and 90s, he actually has books with Three Ravens Publishing. What the publisher talked about was that they do publish some of his old books that are out of print, but they're also sometimes publish some of his new stuff. So one of the books they've published is his book, To Open the Sky, and then they have another book by him titled The Book of Skulls. And so it's really cool that this small indie publisher is able to get one of the major science fiction authors to come over, and that probably helps in getting the word out about this publisher. They also talked about their book Wingless by David M. Janes, and then they are breaking into children's books with their new book Special Ed and the White Force by James Older, which they actually had the cover artist of the book here at the convention, which was a lot of fun to see him. They also have the book Taming the Night by one of their featured authors, J.F. Posthumous. And J.F. Posthumous, she actually does a lot of their cover art. Not all of it, but she does a significant portion of Three Ravens cover art. And she also writes her own novels for them, which is really cool that she is able to do both. They also have a short story collection that seems like a sci-fi short story collection titled Tomorrow's Hope. They have the book Serendipitous Hope by William Joseph Roberts, who again is the publisher at Three Ravens Publishing. They talked about their Assault Team Volume 1 anthology, which is a short story collection. And It Came from the Trailer Park Volume 3.5, which actually has a short story by Kevin J. Anderson, a connection to Kevin. And so that's really cool that they can bring in Kevin for something like that. Kevin's a big name in the sci-fi fantasy world. They also have the book Hidden Motives by J.F. Posthumous, Contested Landing Volume 1, another anthology collection, as well as the Heathens in Heathrows anthology collection. And then their Car Warriors Marathon of Madness collection, which also has a metal band song to it, apparently. And I think he showed us. I think he showed us some of that music at the convention, which was pretty cool. They also have their Go Hard or Go Home, a Car Warriors Auto Duel and Chronicles anthology. They have their Expecting New Books in their Car Warrior series. So this is, they told us some of the what's coming next. They told us what to expect in the future. So they had their Car Warrior series, their JTF-13 series, which is coming, Starflight, more in that, and their Bent series. Those all are coming up soon. They'll have new books published. That was announced at the convention. They also announced the Wingless series by David M. James. And then they also announced probably one of the best titles at the convention, which was Your Call is Very Important to Us, a veterans charity anthology. And not only is that a terrific title for a short story collection, let me tell you, that is the hilarious and also very on-point title for the collection, but it also kind of gets to the problem with veterans healthcare and stuff. But they did mention that this book is currently held up by DoD because in a lot of military writing, if you're doing something that has bearing with like actual military matters, generally you have to get it cleared by the DoD before you can publish it. And some authors will just publish it anyway, but you run the high risk that the DoD will sue or force you to take it down because you have inadvertently have sensitive information. I do remember the story about how for one of the Jack Ryan books, I believe it was The Sum of All Fears, Tom Clancy had written some information that was so specific that the military was trying to get him to not publish the book because they were afraid that people would learn how to make a nuclear bomb. Anyway, that charity anthology reminded me of that story. They also talked about their book Ashes of Eternity by Jeremy Spires. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, which I believe is forthcoming. Their Raven and the Crow, Shores of Blood by Michael K. Falciani. Ghost Ship Derelict by David Hensley and J.R. Handel. They have the book Scales of Injustice by J.F. Posthumous, which is kind of like a sci-fi murder mystery thriller type book. And then Space Pew Pew by David Batterina, which was kind of pitched as kind of like being like Spaceballs. Like if you like that type of humor, if you like that kind of poking fun at science fiction stories, they said this looks like a lot of fun. So those were all the books that they talked about. And I do want to talk about one thing that I appreciated from the publisher, and that is that the publisher talked about how when their approach to things like sex scenes in their books is that they will either not include it, or if it's included, they try to cut away to keep it more appropriate, or they try to make it have a specific purpose in the story, so they're not just adding that to make it, explicit in their books or anything. They're not writing this stuff to encourage smut or anything like that. And I appreciate that because so rarely do publishers act like that. In fact, it seems like a ton of publishers, I'm not going to mention specific ones, but a ton of publishers specifically entice readers to think about sexuality with books because they try to put explicit stuff in there. And it's like, you realize you could do this story without being explicit. So anyway, I was very pleased that the publisher made a point to discuss that. And so there was just some fascinating stuff. I very much got like a punk rock attitude from this publisher, specifically in the fact that they talked so much about having like metal bands involved, and their covers feel very metal and very edgy, and so that which sets them apart from a lot of publishers. And again, I mentioned this in my Raconteur Press video, but I'm also going to mention it here, that so many people in the review space want to just stick it to the New York publishers, and they feel a vendetta against traditional publishing. And I do not feel that way. However, despite my love of traditional publishing, I also want to encourage indie publishing to rise to the occasion, for more people to learn about indie publishing, which is why I went to this convention to cover these important panels. So if you are one of those people who has that belief of wanting to stick it to traditional publishing, it's not enough, in my opinion, that we just buy self-published books. You have to support small publishers or indie publishers. And so this is the perfect way to do that, is to learn about and perhaps buy books from indie publishers. And I do one day intend to read some of the books from this series so that I might learn more about this publisher and see what kind of books they have. So I want to thank everyone involved with that panel. Thank Three Ravens Publishing for coming to LibertyCon. I had a blast there. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.